Vă spun bun găsit, dragi telespectatori, la o nouă ediție emisiunii Viitorul Medicina Holistică, alături de doamna doctor Florinela Balan în Clinica Medicală Aura Vita. Doamna doctor, nu toate cuplurile au armonie. De ce?
Pentru că suntem diferiți. Bărbații de femei funcționăm după reguli diferite. Nu suntem la fel, pur și simplu. Noi ne atragem, știți că suntem complementari, că așa se spune, că ne atragem unii pe alții și că acest lucru ar fi benefic, că deși nu semănăm, să ne completăm. Dar apoi lucrul ăsta devine o problemă, o să vedeți, faptul că totuși nu semănăm deloc, adică. Iar iubirea, pasiunea, că vorbim de pasiune aici, da? Vorbim de cuplu, vorbim de iubire, vorbim de pasiune. Pasiunea din cuplu de la început, în final, în căsnicii, în timp, se duce de râpă. Și atunci, dacă nu înțelegem noi anumite lucruri despre diferențele dintre bărbați și femei pe care ar trebui să le știm când intrăm într-o relație puternică cum este căsătoria. Societatea ar trebui să facă, de fapt, niște cursuri serioase cu tinerile perechi, referitoare la cum funcționăm în cuplu. Pentru că este total diferită o relație de prietenie când ești decât iubit cu iubită, cu relația de cuplu de după căsătorie. Suntem pur și simplu mașinării diferite și nu știm acest lucru. Intrăm cumva în căsnicie, în relație, nepregătiți pentru ce urmează. Ca să ne facem o idee, o să vă prezint pe domnul doctor John Gray, care el este și medic și este și psiholog și s-a specializat pe consiliere maritală și o să vedeți în următorul filmuleț cum arată de fapt sau cum sunt problemele în cuplu.
So I asked them to turn up the lights so that I could see you as well. We are talking about relationships after all. And the most important thing in a relationship, men, is to see your wife. You can see who's married in a restaurant or who's dating. If a man is dating a woman, he's looking right at her. He's got one goal. And once he's climbed that mountain, you can relax. So you see the married men, they're looking around. Quite often somebody else catches their attention. I haven't seen her before. And it doesn't mean he doesn't love her, his wife. It just means he never saw that before. It's like we all do this. That's why we go on vacations to lovely spots, new places. Getting off the plane here in Bend, it was blown away by the beautiful mountain. It's exciting. You go somewhere new and different, it stimulates a brain chemical called dopamine. And dopamine gives us motivation, it gives us pleasure, it gives us focus, and it gives us happiness in our relationships, passion. When we fall in love with somebody, it's literally like we're high on drugs. Maybe you don't remember if you've been married for 28 years like I have, but I'm reminded of it with my youngest daughter, who's in that first falling in love stage with her live-in. They're planning, but she's a modern woman. She wants to be completely financial self-sufficient before she gets married. That's the new woman. She wants to be sufficient. Yes. I mean, we all want to be self-sufficient. We all want to be independent, and then from a place of wholeness come together. It's a new world. And I'm going to talk about that new world today. But one of the most important things, understand this brain chemical, dopamine. Because when you haven't met someone before and you're getting to know them, all the ingredients are there to stimulate dopamine. Newness. And there's no history. You have complete, where are we going with this? What's going to happen? And that stimulates this brain chemical. And in men, dopamine stimulates a hormone called testosterone. So suddenly men's testosterone levels are surging. The average man at 50 has half the testosterone levels he had as a young man. It starts to drop. A lot of things contribute to that, but one of the things is marriage. You know, I'm 62, but I went to the 50s with my friends, and several of my friends got divorced, and they came alive. I'm not recommending divorce to come alive. But I'm recommending learning new relationship skills to come alive in your marriage. But it's like suddenly when you're with somebody new, just going somewhere new, being with somebody new, it stimulates dopamine. And for men, dopamine stimulates testosterone. And for men, testosterone lowers stress. Stress, I don't mean stress in your life. Life is always stressful, problems everywhere. But how do we react to life is dependent on our hormone response to life. And for men, testosterone is the hormone that helps men keep their stress levels down. Most people don't know this, but I learned this when I started, it was like 30 years ago. I was reading, 20 years ago, maybe 30, somewhere in there. I was about to go see the movie Grumpy Old Men. And I was also reading that one of the differences between young men and old men was that men's testosterone levels go down. And then I made the link, grumpy old men. Think about men when they haven't been laid for a while. They get grumpy. They're irritable. And yet we always thought that testosterone caused all that irritability. But it's actually, for men, it's estrogen. It's all those grumpy old men have super high estrogen levels and low testosterone. Who knew? One of the biggest risk factors for heart disease, prostate cancer for men is low testosterone. All men with depression have low testosterone. And that's why depression is very different for a man than for a woman. Depression for a man is that feeling, nobody wants me. I'm not needed anymore. Basically, I'm out of work. Nobody there to respond to me. Nobody there for me to fix, help, serve, support. So being out of work is the major depression for men, or being in a marriage where you feel you can't do anything to make your partner happy. I get to see, as a marriage counselor for over 30 years, people often on their last exit. Because I'm famous, people say, oh, you got to go see him. So I get the tough cases. But it's a challenge. And what I hear again and again from men, I take the men aside. What is the problem here? Okay, what's going on here? If we could fix one problem, what would that be? John, the only problem here is my wife's not happy. That's it. Now, I do these seminars, workshops at my ranch for like 4 days. And we start out men in one room, women in the other. Without my influence, I have the men write down their complaints about their wives, relationships, women in one room. Women do it in another room. And then we spend the whole 4 days working on that. And men have one sheet, and women have 5. And men's list is 1 or 2 words. Critical, complains, nags, punishes, not interested in sex. That's about the longest one they come up with. There's that list over there. And women got all these lists. So we get a big long list. Everything's a long sentence, and if this, then that, and all that stuff. And men go, see? Now, I got a few claps on that, which I'm not asking for, but that's what excites men. I made a difference. That's why men love their dogs so much. When I come home, my dog is happy I'm alive. It touches something so deep inside of every man. The whole evolution of men were like out there in the dangerous world. If you came home alive, they celebrated. Now he's like, oh, he's back. You know, you left the lights on in the living room last night before you left. That's what I get. So men go, if she was just happy, and of course, what is a man thinking? If she was just the way she was when I married her. See, when men get married, they want you to stay the same as if you can. They don't realize that women will never be the same. They're like the weather. It's always changing. It's sunshine, blue cloud, puffy cloud, blue sky, puffy clouds, rainstorms, lightning strikes, hurricanes, tornadoes. Now, if you're from Mars, you have these instincts to do the worst thing when you're with a Venusian. See, on Mars, when there's tornadoes, what do? We find a ditch and lie low. That's not what women expect you to do. When that tornado comes in, you're supposed to stand there. Is something the matter? And if you read any of my books, then what you have to say, when every cell in your body says, I can't take it anymore, I got to find a ditch and lie low, let me get in my car and drive somewhere. Instead, you stand there and just keep looking. And when there's a break, you say, tell me more. She feels like I'm married to Superman. Afterwards, if you could do that, and I teach people how to do that, but you have to at least know what you're trying to do here. Because men have been married, they say, no matter what I say or do, it makes it worse. And I say, that's because what you say and do is wrong. It just doesn't work. You've just told me it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But what does work? Nothing. Nothing. You cannot make a woman happy. You cannot change the weather. It changes by itself. Women are grown-ups. They can feel better. They can get happier. They know how to do it. Just their way of doing it is different from ours. All I have to do when I'm stressed out is sit down. Men have a switch back here. As soon as you sit down, blood flow stops to your brain. They did some experiments on that. They put women at the end of the day, sit down, men on the way sitting down. And they measured the brain activity. Women sit down, their brains speed up. More blood flow. And you say, what are you thinking? And she says, which every woman in this room can predict. Well, while sitting on this couch, I'm thinking about all the things I should be doing that I'm not doing while I'm doing this silly experiment. And then they do the man, and the man's sitting there, and you look at the scans, nothing's happening. Is it broken? What is this? And she's like, what? So you ask him, what are you thinking? And you now all know that answer to that question if you've been married. He says, nothing. And now he's got evidence. See, honey, I'm not withholding from you. I don't have big secrets. I'm not hiding my problems from you. I'm trying to forget them. Why do we have to talk about them? Because one of the primary ways that men cope with stress, and remember, what's the hormone that lowers stress for men? Testosterone. So what's the hormone that lowers stress for men? It's testosterone. If I've got all these problems in my life and I'm solving them, I'm releasing testosterone, and it's keeping my stress levels down. At the end of the day, I still have all these unmet problems, right? All these problems I haven't solved. So now I'm not solving problems, my stress level goes up. I can't do anything about it. I'm home. I can't do anything about it. So stress goes up. So how have men adapted to deal with problems you can't do anything about once you're sitting? Forget it. We can turn our brains off. We have an off switch. Women don't. They cannot forget anything. Here's a simple test in gender intelligence. Who has a better, bigger memory? Women or men? Women. This is proven. The hippocampus in a woman's brain is twice as big as in a man's brain. The second story is like a library, recording everything on the first floor. On the second floor, she records every mistake you've ever made. And something she can't do much about is when she is stressed, blood flow goes to that second floor. The elevator, she goes up, she forgets every good thing you've ever done and remembers every mistake you've made. And how does she get off that floor? She's got to lower her stress. She cannot forget it. So what does she do? What's a woman's reaction? Just measure the brain. There's wonderful brain studies now. Under moderate stress, women's brains have 8 times more blood flow to the emotional part of the brain, which then goes to the hippocampus. She's bombarded with memories. For a man, he forgets everything. So I'm not saying that women are more emotional than men. I'm saying that Under moderate stress, women have a stronger emotional reaction. Under big stress, men have a stronger emotional reaction. Now, what's big stress for a man? A problem you can't solve and can't forget. That's big stress for a man. A problem you can't solve and you can't forget. No matter how many football games you're watching, no matter how much news you're watching, how much pressing weights in the gym you're doing, you can't forget that problem. So now your stress levels are shooting up. So for man, that's a big problem. So historically, evolutionary wise, that's lions, tigers, bears. Oh my. Lions, tigers, bears, men have a big reaction. And by the way, biologically, what's happening? As soon as a man feels powerless, his testosterone converts to estrogen and floods his brain with fear and anger. It's when men go to their female hormones, they lose control of their masculine hormones, their testosterone levels drop. Literally, testosterone converts into estrogen through an enzyme called aromatase. So if I'm a man, testosterone driven, every man has to have 30 times more testosterone than your average woman to get up on stage to do anything. Without that, he's like, I don't want to work anymore. I just want to go play, watch TV, and do nothing. Every loser I've ever counseled, I said, why'd you do that? I felt like it. Well, why don't you get up and do this? I don't feel like it. While we do want feelings, it's a wonderful evolutionary lift. Men have to always reason first and then check it out with your feelings. Why do I say that? Because I counsel losers a lot. And they follow their feelings instead of saying, but does that make sense? I don't care. You got to start caring if you're a man about what makes sense and then check it out with your feelings. And for women, you got to check out what is my feeling first, which will access your intuition, and then what makes sense. We're complements to each other, and we see the wiring in the brain is the same. The intuitive center over here, the emotional center over here called the right anterior parietal lobe in a woman, which has to do with personal relationships. Has to do with, what are you eating today? What should we have for food today? What should I wear? Look what she's wearing. What do our children need? What do the people need? What does the earth need? What does our family need? How can I improve this relationship? That's all relational activities. I discovered that on vacation with my 3 daughters and my wife in Hawaii. As we're sitting around with nothing to do, I listen to their conversations. Where are we going to eat? Where are we going to eat? What are we going to wear? What did you wear? Can I wear that? Not that women are limited to that at all. But when they're relaxing, see, that's what I'm talking about. This is how women relax. They go to the right part of the brain. That stimulates estrogen. It also stimulates a magic hormone that most people are not aware of called oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that lowers stress in women. This was an amazing discovery. What was it? 12 years ago, they started finding this out. Just to brag a moment, because I am from Mars, talking about it 30 years ago. I discovered it when I read an article about oxytocin, what women produce when they see babies. You know, back in the day, we're learning about being there, bonding with your children at birth. Huge amounts of oxytocin comes out, and you bond. Well, then I went to malls just watching women, watching men. I used to sit there and just watch. There was a chair. And in those days, when women had a lot more oxytocin than they have now, in those days, a woman carrying a baby along like this, women would gather. Ooh, ooh, oh. The same responses my wife would make when I brought her a rose. And when I put my arm around her, we saw something sweet in a movie, and I realized, this is what makes women smile. Now we have the science behind it. Oxytocin lowers stress for women. Then we found out oxytocin allows women to have climax in the bedroom. That perks up men's ears. There's our pill. There is a pill, oxytocin pill, synthetic oxytocin. You can give it to her. She'll be really turned on, and it's been proven. Next day, she shoots you. Because drugs take you up, but then they bring you down. So by understanding these two dynamics, we're living in a world today where there's lots of stress. And what we want to do is have equality, mutual respect, mutual appreciation. But we're facing a new challenge. As women are more in the workplace, feeling more independent, testosterone gets produced. There's nothing wrong with testosterone in a woman's body. Some women are just born with more. So they're over here saying, John, what are you talking about? I don't care what I wear. But most women have, 90% of women have this low testosterone, high estrogen, and oxytocin is the hormone in all women that lowers cortisol for them. Cortisol, the stress hormone. Well, if you give a man an injection of oxytocin, he goes to sleep. Because after climax as well, after he has climax, that's a release of oxytocin. What does he do? He goes right to sleep. So the bottom line is anything that's oxytocin producing, after you've done it 3 or 4 times, kind of puts a man to sleep. Which puts a real damper on relationships unless men figure out that if I do oxytocin things for my wife, I'm not just doing oxytocin producing things for her, I'm solving a problem. And when I solve a problem, testosterone levels go up. So when my wife is talking, I'm in the storm. I say, tell me more. My testosterone stays up because I know how to make it work. And I know what I'm doing is helping her create more oxytocin. Planning dates, bringing flowers, giving cards, all the symbols of Valentine's Day you do regularly on a little score, just a little bit. She's always looking ahead to a special time. That causes her oxytocin levels to rise up, to lower her stress, so that her stress levels don't shoot up. Because right now, women's stress levels, by studies, are on average twice as high as men's and 4 times higher at home. It's shocking. It's shocking. And what we can do is realize our relationships can help us to lower the stress levels in women by learning new skills to create oxytocin in her. Better communication does it. See her, hear her. Notice when she gets her hair cut. Those little things. So I'm going to finish here. The little things are so important. Men's testosterone is so important. I've never given such a short talk in my life. But I'll finish with 3 takeaways. Simple, easy takeaways. I didn't even do my slideshow. It was going to be staying focused in a hyper world. But but as soon as somebody laughed, it brought out the best of me. So you got the best of me, and you've been the best. And I want to just give you 3 thoughts to go with. Wait. For men, this is something men need formulas. We need systems. That's the left brain, by the way, for men. Left anterior parietal lobe is twice as big for women. That's solving problems, fixing the toaster, arranging the computer, technical things where you're fixing things. That stimulates testosterone, solving problems, nurturing things. Now, we have a combination of male and female in all of us, but here's how you nurture the female hormones, the male hormones. A secret most men don't know. You can bring her 24 roses. In a man's brain, he calculates on the left brain. That's 24 roses. That should be 24 points. If roses cause oxytocin, that should be a huge surge. It's 1 point of oxytocin. So we have to know. If you were to bring 1 rose, guess what happens? 1 point of oxytocin. 6 roses, guess what you get? 1 point of oxytocin. 100 roses, maybe 2 points of oxytocin. Little things make a big difference for women. So it's not the big stuff. The big stuff's fine. You go to work and you do better and better at work. You think like, okay, I'll never have to bring roses again. You go to work, you get 1 point. You come home, you get 1 point. You're married, 1 point for that. That's it, 3 points a day. And she's doing the same thing, so the score's even when you get home. And if she's made you dinner and there's candlelight burning, oh my God, you're in big trouble because she gives herself a point for matching napkins with plates. If she says, I made your favorite meal, you're in big trouble. Because she gives herself all these points for knowing what you like, going to the store and buying what you like, not what she likes, what you like, all those little selfless sacrifices. She's giving herself points and she looks at you 33-3. She's going, who is this guy? He's a 0. 33 minus 3 is 30-0. So do lots of little things. Hugs 4 times a day. Affection. Compliments. Try to notice things. Plan dates. These are all big oxytocin producers. I've written 17 books on this subject. Now, for men, What can you do to keep his testosterone levels up, women? You want that man alive, dynamic. Here's 3 little things. And remember, they're little things, but little things sometimes have a big effect on men too. When he's talking, he pauses. Find authenticity inside. Here's 3 phrases to use every day. And you will watch him, chest, he'll pop up like, yes. You say to him as he's paused, you go, that makes sense. You know, he's walking around like, and in his mind, he's thinking, what did I say? The next phrase, good idea. I think I'm ready for my next TED Talk. He's going, good idea. Worth sharing with others, right? Right? And then the magic phrase that every man craves to hear once he gets married. Oh my gosh, it's such a deficit for us. Whenever you can say it, women. Don't hold it back. You don't realize how important it is. Just with a big smile on your face, say, you're right. Thank you all so very much. I hope this is an idea worth sharing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Domnul Dr. John Gray vorbea că anumite substanțe ca dopamina pot explica anumite comportamente la bărbați.
Ați văzut? Sigur. Nu gândim de obicei că există o corelație între neurotransmițători gen dopamină, dar și serotonină, da? Și comportamentul uman. Dar avem exemple că o femeie în perioada delicată, de exemplu, este iritabilă, da? Are comportamentul diferit, iar la menopauză este foarte dificilă. Știm acest lucru. Deci există o influență. Avem o explicație medicală asupra legăturii dintre nivelul de neurotransmițător și comportament și ar trebui să ținem cont de acest lucru. Pentru că nu ne putem certa cu soția numai dacă că este iritabilă, dacă știm, adică faptul că știm că există o cauză ar putea ca lucrul ăsta să nu strice relația. Nivelul de dopamină, adică ați văzut, are legătură așa cu acțiunea, cu noutatea, cu suspansul. Știți? Deci crește acest nivel de dopamină în astfel de situații, stimulează producerea testosteronului la bărbat. Dacă noi știm acest lucru, atunci trebuie să știm că bărbatul are nevoie de provocare în viața lui. Noi ca femei trebuie să știm acest lucru. Trebuie să creștem deci dopamina ca să fie în formă. Da? El se plictisește repede, deci așa e făcut. Și devine morăcănos. Ați văzut. Se plictisește, de aceea dacă femeia nu este multifacetată, adică dacă femeia nu este ea interesantă, știți, tot timpul interesantă și mereu altă persoană, știți acest lucru. Adică să te cheme astăzi Ioana, mâine Maria, știți, poi mâine Carmen și așa mai departe, atunci se plictisește. Și deci depinde de abilitatea femeii de a menține suspansul. În plus, femeile sunt mult mai complicate, sunt mai complexe, ele așa sunt făcute, așa suntem făcute, create mai ales pentru armonie în relație, deci cu alt scop. Deci mai mult emoțional, un accent emoțional aici, și pentru procreere. Sau sunt surse de iubire, de emotivitate, de sentimente, de fericire, de love. Să vedem acum un alt filmuleț cu Alan Peace despre diferența între bărbați și femei.
For the women in the room, I need your backup and support on some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight. I need you to help me. If you're a woman, please raise your hand. I want to see what the percentage is for the women. Now, I need your backup and support when I talk about some of the research and its findings, what it means, and I need you to call out collectively, yes or no, as a group of women, that what I'm talking about actually happens to you in real life. Now, the reason I need this, because a lot of these gentlemen in this room, when they hear some of this, will say they couldn't possibly be true or right because it never happened to me. Now, for the women, assuming that you agree with what I'm saying, can I get your support on this as a group? Thank you. For example, your typical male in this room, and in fact the typical male in your life, has no idea if you go to a function like this or a party where there are 50 couples, this is the test size, you go with the last couple through the door, it takes your average woman around 11 minutes in that room to have figured out the relationship between every couple in that room. Yes or no? Most men have difficulty with this. In a room like this with no windows where you've entered for the first time, one thing we did find is that most men can sense the direction of north and point towards it. This is a very important skill. Now less than half the amount of women can do the same task. Now in simple terms, most men can sense north, most women have difficulty. Why would men be able to sense north? Obviously there's some advantage to this. I'll come back and explain that. For the women in the room, what I'm going to say now will be a shock to you, but men's brains are a fairly simple mechanism compared to yours. Looking at brain scans and the way they now reveal how we behave, give some deep insights into our behaviour, particularly into women's intuition, this strange thing that's existed for thousands of years. The first thing you notice about male brains, and when I say male or man or masculine, I'm talking here about most men, most of the time, most of this applies. About 4 out of 5 men across the board, about your average. And most women, most of the time, it mostly applies. There are no absolutes. You can judge which applies to you in your life. Men's brains are more organised. When you scan them, you notice that everything has its place. So if you can picture for this exercise, it's like he's got little rooms all over his head. And each room has at least one major function that works well in isolation of the rest. Women's brains tend to have functions spread more often on both sides, and often front and back. In the case of speech and language, it's both sides, front and back, and at the back. The connecting cord between the left and right, the corpus callosum, on average for a typical woman, runs around 10% thicker physically and carries up to 30% more connections between the left and right. And this gives women what we call a multitasking brain. In simple terms, gentlemen, that means that your typical woman that you would meet in your life can perform somewhere between 2 and 4 simultaneous unrelated tasks. For the women, is this true, yes or no? For example, she can run an internet program, talk on a headset to somebody in a foreign country about an unrelated program, be listening to a third party having a conversation and drinking tea. Multitasking. Now, most men's brains, with less connections and more neater arrangement, can do, and I'll tell you this, they can do one thing at a time. Now, the women in the room, you've heard a man say, look, I can do one thing at a time. He's not being rude, he's being actually correct. Now, he can do it very, very well, by the way. Real well. But one thing. For example, if a typical male pulls over to the side of the road to read a street directory because he's not lost, he's finding a new way. He pulls out his map or directory. What is the first thing most men will do with the radio? They turn it off. Now think about this. He turns the radio off to read a map. Does that make sense to you? Well, if you could scan his brain, you'd probably get a clue to this. He can't operate navigation and hearing simultaneously. He can do one or the other. If he's driving down the motorway and you talk with him, he misses the turn off. On a roundabout you talk, he gets the wrong turn, you get the blame. Now, understanding one thing at a time mentality is a very important key for women to understanding any male in your life. So we're going to talk about excellence in relationships and how well can you sell yourself to other people. And on an increasing basis today, in every business, how often can you sell yourself to the opposite sex? Get cooperation and get a yes to what you propose. Now, this one thing at a time mentality. Most of the men in this room, you've had, from an evolutionary standpoint, a fairly clear job description. Nobody's argued the point till recently. Now, in simple terms, we describe men as lunch chasers. This is your job. For a long time, your job has been to find a target and hit it. So you get up in the morning and off you go looking. So it makes sense that your brain would have evolved with abilities to allow you to pick up a target in the distance, estimate coordinates. How far away is it? How fast is it moving? If I caught this thing, how big would it be when I got there? At the speed I'm going, at this angle, and the angle it's going, how fast do I go to head it off at the pass? How far do I bring my arm back with a rock or stick of this size? And when do I release it at this speed to hit a moving zebra at 50 metres? This is called visual spatial awareness. Now, scans show that it sits for most men in the right part of the brain and across the back, left and right visual brain. It's the #1 brain skill for most men in virtually every culture. Now, it's a skill that most women do not need. The reason being, as the childbearer of this species, your brain is organised for different skills and abilities. Hitting targets, long-distance navigation are not 2 of them. You don't need to be able to do that. You need other things, but they're not 2 of them. So the guy's out there, he hits the target, now he needs to sense north. The purpose of this? To get home. If you're going to be a long-distance navigator, you need to be able to sense direction to get back, otherwise you're a waste of time. So he gets back home with his lunch, throws it down, he lies about how hard it was to catch. And then for the rest of the night, he just gazes in the fire. That's it. In simple terms, male job description. Find a target, estimate coordinates, hit it with a rock. Find north, lie a bit, and fire gaze. Now, men's brains, you fellas, your brains are organised to do these things. Now, fire-gazing for modern men can happen at any time of the day. Most women will recognise that certainly early evening involving newspapers, magazines or remote controls. Now, here's a typical man fire-gazing at the end of the day. He's reading information, a magazine or a book. If you could scan his brain when he's doing this, you know what you would discover? He's hearing impaired. He's technically deaf for using old, politically incorrect terms. Now, for the women, this is important to understand. Men's brains are organised, they can speak or listen. Fellas, is this true or not? Speak or listen. We can speak or listen. Most of us cannot do both. This is why when men talk with other men, they have turns. So if there's myself and these two gentlemen in front talking, just on a non-threatening basis, I might go first, I'd have my turn. They would actually let me have the turn. They would not attempt to talk simultaneously. I get to the end, and as I'm talking, they do just what they're doing now. They go completely blank and they go... This is men showing, I'm interested. I get to the end, and then he'd have his turn, and we go... Then this gentleman would have a turn. This is men bonding, getting on very well. How do women talk with other women? Simultaneously. They're all going at the same time. Now, women are the butt of jokes of this from men in every country. Men say in every country. We go to up to 30 countries in a year, and you can hear the men at meetings like this say, listen to the women because you can hear them. All talking at the same time. And the men say, no one's listening. Fellas, that's not true. If you could scan their brains, you would discover their brains can speak and listen simultaneously. For the women, is this true? Yes or no? Now, for most men, this is a difficult concept to get your head around. Speaking and hearing at the same time. Not only can they do that, they can do it on several unrelated subjects. They can also do this in one sentence. Now, women operate on 5 tones of voice, of which men can identify 3. Men operate on 3 tones. So a woman will start off on subject 1, halfway through without apparent notification. She introduces a second subject. Now, the women listening realise by the tone of voice, here's a second subject. Most of the men think, this is the same subject. Now they start thinking, what is she talking about? Now she brings in a third subject, goes back to the first. The women know 3 things were being discussed. Is this true, gals? You look at the faces on the men, they're thinking, what is going on in this group? Now, if they know you well, they might say, what are you talking about? Or something very subtle like this. Now, from a nest defending standpoint, being the child bearer means that your brain would need to have the abilities to allow you to defend territory and offspring at close range. Long distance navigation, target hitting is not relevant. You need a number of other skills. First, being able to multitask with both hands would be a big advantage from a gathering standpoint. You could pick at twice the rate. If, like most men, like 93% of men, you're dominant only with your right hand, which is your hitting throwing arm, tie that in with your spatial skills, there's your lunch chaser. That means if you're going to do that in gathering, you're going to be limited. So you don't need a spot in the left brain to identify the right hand like most men. In fact, nearly half women don't have a spot on either side to identify either hand. They cannot tell left from right in simple terms. And boy, do they get stick from men about this. You don't even know your left from right, Cheryl. Well, no. Successful nest defending doesn't need that. You don't need a dominant arm. You need to be able to multitask equally. There are far more ambidextrous women than men. And women have several other advantages. I mean, anatomically our eyes are the same. Men's eyes are slightly larger. Women have more white of the eyes. White of the eyes is a communication tool. But what your brain software lets your brain see is very different. Now, if you picture most of the males in your life, that you know, now it doesn't matter whether he's 5 years of age or 65, principle's the same, has a form of mild tunnel vision. Most men can see far better than women and test to be better at seeing targets directly in front over long distances. Peripherally, most men it's all the blur out here, we can't see much at all, but we can see that fly on the wall back there. Tie that in with your dominant right arm and your spatial skills. There's your lunch chasing machine. This is his job. Now, the advantage of that, of course, he can see a target undistracted. The downside is he can't find things in refrigerators, cupboards, drawers. Every woman in this room has recently had a conversation with a male. He's standing in front of an open refrigerator. See if you recognise it. Where's the butter? It's in the refrigerator. Well, no, it's not. I'm standing here looking now and there's none here. Raise your hand if you have had this conversation. Now his sister's not there. You walk into the kitchen, you thrust your arm in the refrigerator, and right in front of his face at eye level is this gigantic tub of butter.
Doamna doctor, femeile sunt mai dotate, metaforic spus, decât bărbații?
Nu. Pur și simplu sunt diferite. Pot să spun că scopul, de fapt, pentru care au fost create este important. Da? Ele au fost create pentru creație, pentru armonie, pentru iubire. Fiind sursă de iubire pentru bărbați și pentru copii. De aici complexitatea lor, pentru că au un rol foarte important. Dar nu sunt mai dotate. Sunt dotate pentru tema pe care o au, având o temă cumva mai complexă. Asta e tot. Nu putem substitui bărbații, noi ca femei. Și orice femeie singură știe acest lucru, pentru că este nefericită. Nu există o femeie singură fericită, nu există așa ceva. Toate femeile care sunt singure, și știu că sunt foarte multe, sunt nefericite fără un bărbat. Sunt multe femei, mame în special, care își cresc singure copii și devin femei bărbat. Știți, se masculinizează, devin young. Acum, trebuie să știți că se îmbolnăvesc aceste femei, pentru că noi avem, aici în clinică avem foarte multe cazuri de femei care ajung, vin târziu și ele se îmbolnăvesc, vin cu boli. Se îmbolnăvesc, cu alte cuvinte, noi pretindem că ne putem transforma în femei, putem să substituim bărbații, dar de fapt nu putem substitui un bărbat. Bărbatul, așa cum este el, este unic. De aceea femeia îl hrănește în toate felurile, și energetic și la concret, că le gătim, pentru că de fapt are nevoie de el. E foarte important acest lucru să înțelegem. În primul rând, așa, ca să glumim, că n-are cine să o admire dacă n-ar fi un bărbat. Și apoi să o înțeleagă. Femeia are nevoie emoțional să fie înțeleasă. Și apoi să o protejeze, pentru că femeia are nevoie foarte mult să fie protejată. Și apoi să o iubească. Și apoi să o facă mamă. Și așa, dar ca să spunem așa că noi două suntem femei și să glumim, bărbatul este un fel de rău necesar, știți?
Răul care face bine.
Este răul care face bine.